Woodcraft, helping you make woodwork.
Okay, good afternoon and thanks for coming to Woodcraft and our every Saturday at 1 o'clock demo time. Today's demo is going to be on the Oneway Wolverine Sharpening Jig setup. It's a, if you want to get into wood turning and you're using conventional turning tools and so forth, it's mandatory that you have some means of sharpening. What is the most dangerous tool or utensil in a kitchen?
Knife. Dull knife.
There you go. Same holds true for wood turning. Dull turning tools, gouges, knives, whatever you choose to call them, are dangerous because the duller they get, the more you have to push in to get stuff cut. The cut is not going to be clean, and you might slip and have a big whoops, and there goes your turning days. So what I'm going to do is show you, demonstrate the Oneway tool jig. But before we do that, it's kind of a lead-in. What I want to do is talk about grinders just a little bit, because when you purchase this Oneway setup, that will recommend Oneway, and the instructions will recommend a regular speed grinder. Regular speed grinder means about 3,450 RPM. That's the most common variety that you can get. This one right here, this is the store brand Wood River, and this one is a slow speed grinder. Slow speed means just half the speed, or 1,725. I'm no machinist or metallurgist, but it makes sense to me that the faster a grinder is turning, regardless of what kind of wheels on it, the more heat is going to be generated. Heat is your enemy. And so you don't want to spend 150 bucks on a nice turning tool and have it all black and blue at the end of it and everything. So if you don't have a grinder, I highly recommend this one. Not only because we're in Woodcraft, because this is just an excellent grinder. It does not come with these wheels, okay? The grinder that you buy here comes with aluminum oxide. I think it's a 60 and 180 grit. 120, 60 and 120, I think. It's an excellent grinder. It really is. Just out of the box, you put the shields on and so forth. It's very, 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 very good. And it will, because of the fact that it's it's half the speed, it's not going to burn your tools as much, if at all. I decided to trick this one out a little bit. These obviously don't look like your normal aluminum oxide or just stone wheels. These are what they call CBN, and that stands for cubic boron nitride. That's all I know about that. I purchased these from a guy over near Seattle and put them on here, and it just works very, very well. No matter whose grinder you get, this is a step up from stone wheels or your aluminum oxide wheels. But be that as it may, if you don't have a grinder, try and find one that's slow speed, and I highly recommend the store brand, the Wood River one. I don't know if we have any in stock or not right now, but quite often they're here most of the time. So the thrust of the Oneway jig is to most wood turners, let me back up a little bit. Most old timers, wood turners, will walk up to a grinder and grind it by hand, and they'll roll it and all that kind of stuff. And it looks okay and it cuts, you know. And if you know how to do that, that's neat. Most of us don't. And so what you do is come up with some type of a jig that allows you to have repeatability in the grinding process, and so you're not scraping off a whole bunch of metal trying to achieve something. I've tried sharpening by hand without a jig, and I just gave up. It was pointless to do it, so thus I went out and got the Oneway system. The thing you have to have in the Oneway system is this, the big box, if you will. You gotta have this. This is fundamental. You gotta have this. And what's included in this box are this piece right here, this piece right here, left and right, and this piece, this long arm, and I'll show you how that fits in there, and the platform. 4 major pieces are in here. The arm, the platform, and these 2 locking assemblies. These little red handles, they're on a cam, and as you slide that tool in here, you can lock the things in place, okay? But you have to have this at least if you want to get a Oneway jig. The other things This is the one way. It's called Very Grind, and this is what we're going to use today. It's this tool right here, okay? And this is the big mystery tool. There's many expletives have been shouted over trying to figure this thing out. There are two of these available. There's the Very Grind like this, and there's a Very Grind 2. Today we're going to cover using the original Very Grind. If you get on the internet and you look at, you Google Very Grind versus Very Grind 2, you will find that most turners prefer this. There is nothing wrong with this. It works wonderfully, except what it does is it locks the tool in centered on the grinding wheel surface. You can't go back and forth across the surface. So if you do have like aluminum oxide wheels, you're going to wind up wearing a channel. The area that you're grinding on is right in the center of the wheel. So for that reason only, most folks prefer this one. Do you need to get this? Yes, if you're going to be grinding tools, bowl gouges and spindle gouges, something that has I call it 3 dimensions. When you look at a bowl gouge, this is my favorite bowl gouge, you can see you got a bevel here and it's swept up on the wings and rolling this thing back and forth. I defy even the oldest, best wood turner in the world to replicate it and make it look like this. That's what a jig is for. So we're going to use this original Very Grind jig to do these. The tool that most wood turners love to hate is a skew chisel, and that's this one right here. And there's more of a learning curve on this than there is on just about any other tool, even a bowl gouge. But we're going to show you how using the Wolverine Skew Chisel attachment, that's this little device, will help you sharpen these very, very easily, okay? So you don't need this if you don't have a skew chisel. I challenge you to take this thing out if you have one and learn how to use it, because it's wonderful. You can start sanding at 400 grit if you know how to use those. So I will tell you that these are the items that we have in stock today. So if you get all fired up about getting a one-way grinding jig, there they are. And if you don't get it today, back order, it'll be here in a week and a half or so. So you have to set this up. When you open up the big box, you'll get you get this big piece of paper that shows you how to set it up and all that, and that goes pretty easily until you get to the how to use the grinder stuff. And I beat myself up for a year trying to figure out what the angle should be on this and everything, and I finally came across this article. In fact, if you just wanted to go home right now, read the article, and you don't have to listen to me. If you follow what they do in here, you will be successful, okay? So the setup instructions mean that the grinder itself, the center of the shaft, needs to be between, I think it's 6 1/4 and 6 1/2 inches up from the base. So you can see that I had to put a little riser plate in here and so forth. The front of the wheel is even with the front of the platform. And on the very back page, if you look there under the resources, if you want to trick this thing out a little bit, I showed you, I put the Woodcraft numbers there of all the pieces like the Very Grind and so forth, but also the rubber feet that I use. These things are massive. These are meant to be on subwoofer cabinets. That's for speaker systems. So if you want to, get something that's not going to move, that's a good place to get it. I hate going to places and somebody shows you something and they don't tell you where to get it. So Parts Express, where you get it. These CBN wheels, I gave you a source for those as well too. Just look at both those places online. So we've got this all set up. In this case, this wheel right here is 80 grit. This is 180 grit, coarse fine, I guess you want to call it. It's the only 2 grits that they sell for these things. And these tools are interchangeable back and forth on these assemblies. Let me come down here now and show you how these things slide in and out. When we get to the actual grinding, I'm probably going to have you kind of come up and cluster around over here so you can see what's going on. This thing just slides in and out, and you can lay a tool in here. Now when you set this up, make sure you got sufficient room in back so you don't have to drill a hole in your shop wall to get the pin. And I'm actually going to show you how to grind one little cutter that the arm is actually all the way in. This is the platform. And this is adjustable back and forth. When you tighten these things down, you don't have to lean on them. Don't put huge pressure on it. Just like that. They're not going to go anyplace. Just a little bit of pressure, because those cams will wear out after a while. So, in this article, remember I told you it was a mystery as to where this arm should be. Well, if you look in there, they've got little pieces of wood you can cut out. If you look at this one, it says 40 degrees on it. This is just happens to be, this angle has nothing to do with what we're doing here. It was just there in this piece of plywood. So typically, I grind my bowl and my bowl gouges with a 50-degree bevel. And that 50 degree refers to this right here. That's 50 degrees, okay? So it's very easy. You take the little piece of wood that says 50 degrees on it, you set it on here, loosen this up, push it up until it contacts the wheel, lock it in place, and that's ready to go. So that's what that little gauge is for.
So,
yes, sir.
The difference in the degree is the width of the board that you're putting in?
The width of the board. The height is just whatever is convenient. It'll show you that in there. In fact, in there it shows you some notches in the board. The one notch at the bottom of the little board on the drawing there.
Oh, here?
Yeah. What that is, that's a 2-inch. When you put the tool in the vari-grind, you have to adjust the protrusion. That has to be constant all the time. So what this guy did is he cut a notch that's 2 inches, okay? And so you could just, if I had a notch in this thing, I'd put this over here. That's a little clumsy to do. So what I did instead, say a little piece of scrap maple, I drilled a hole in it, 3/4 of an inch, 2 inches deep. So I take this, do that, 2 inches. Always there. And eventually, after about 13 years or so, the bottom of this hole might get to be 2 1/8 or whatever. But this should give you a long use.
So that protrusion is constant with all the tools?
Constant.
It's always
constant.
2 inches.
2 inches, always 2 inches. Okay, so